All right, a very good evening to everyone on this call, and also good morning or good afternoon if you are joining us from within the country. If you are joining us outside the country, good evening or good afternoon. And we want to welcome you all to our ILS webinar series. We bring this your way once every month. And so, once every month, we give you some free educative content just to help our participants shine in their various fields and industries. And so we welcome you once again to the April edition of the ILS webinar series. And today we will be discussing strategic planning as we advertised. But before we move on to today's topic, we would like to know who is joining us on the call. And so if you are joining us, we just want you to indicate in the comment section your name and where you're joining us from. We would like to interact with you a little before we start. And so if you are joining us on the call, we want to know your name and then where you are joining us from. Can we get some comments before we start? Okay, so Isaac, so we have Isaac Mensa Newton. He says, hello, Isaac here. Looking forward to an inspiring webinar. Thank you, Isaac, for joining us this evening. We have Thomas. Thomas says hi. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us. Dorcas also joining us. She says hi. Thank you, Dorcas. Edinam from Adansi Travels. Thank you, Edinam, for joining us. There's Felix Bonny. We have Andrews and Ponsa Ajiman joining from Obuasi. Thank you, Andrews, for joining us this evening. Isaac is joining us from East Legon. Thank you, Isaac Newton. Thank you for joining us. Can we get a few more before we move on? Beatrice Gia from Accra. Thank you, Beatrice, for joining us. Gabriel here from Tema Community 25. Wow, thank you for joining us, Gabriel. All right. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have a few comments coming in. We will take them as and when the webinar is ongoing. But thank you all for joining us this evening and for making time to join the Institute of Leadership and Strategy. And as you all know, this webinar is being organized by the Institute of Leadership and Strategy, where we have the core mandate of developing leaders and corporate executives across Africa. And as we all know, many organizations are overly managed yet underled. And that is why, as an institute, we are passionate about grooming managers to be leaders and not just technical experts in their field. All right. So today, joining us, we have our very own Dr. Samuel Seglah, who will be taking us through strategic planning. But before I bring him in, I would read his profile before I hand over to him. Okay. So he is a lecturer and a certified strategy professional. He is a corporate trainer, a chartered management consultant, a researcher, and an alternative dispute resolution practitioner with over 12 years combined experience in the areas of management and leadership, corporate strategy development and implementation, corporate governance, business development, international business, training and development, monitoring and evaluation, market research, project management, as well as alternative dispute resolution. He has consulted for a number of corporate institutions, including a significant number of startups within West Africa. He has also facilitated continuous professional development trainings for many corporate institutions in Ghana and served on 6 boards within the past 8 years. In addition, he has coordinated and supervised a number of projects successfully. Samuel is a member of the Institute of Directors Ghana, the Chartered Institute of Management Consultants Canada, a fellow of the Higher Education Academy UK, a member of the American Evaluation Association USA, and also a member of the Institute of Monitoring and Evaluation Practitioners Ghana. He is also an associate fellow of the Boardroom Institute Ghana. He is also a member of the Ghana National Association of ADR Practitioners and the Global ADR Register. Additionally, he is a member of the African Corporate Governance Network. He is the managing consultant of KSAM Consulting Limited and a senior lecturer at the Ghana Communication Technology University. Ladies and gentlemen, before I hand over to our facilitator, a few ground rules. If we have any questions or suggestions whilst our facilitator is doing his presentation, we can drop them in the comment section. And then after he's done with this presentation, I'm going to be engaging him with your questions and comments. So once you have a question, you have any suggestions or any add-ons, you drop them in the comment section. And then when our facilitator is done with his presentation, we will engage him with all your comments and then questions. All right. So without wasting much time, we'll zoom into our main business for today. I'll hand over to our facilitator, Dr. Samuel Seglah, to take us through strategic planning. Good evening, Doc, and you're welcome.
Good evening, Rajwa, and good evening to everyone on the call.
Good evening.
All right. So my name is Samuel, as you've rightly heard from Rajwa, and I'm excited to be with you this afternoon, late afternoon, to have a discussion on strategic planning. Strategic planning. Strategic planning is a word we hear most of the time. And this evening, we want to spend a few minutes exploring what it entails and how, as business or organizational leaders, we can also do our strategic planning. Without talking about strategy, we cannot talk about strategic planning. And I know some of you have taken courses in strategy, but strategic planning is basically a process that is used by organizations to define their direction, that organizations use to make decisions and allocate resources to achieve their goals and objectives. So it is a process because it is not just an event. Strategy entails a lot, but strategic planning is a continuous process. And this process is normally used by organizations and also individuals to define their direction, to make decisions, to allocate resources, and also to achieve their goals and objectives. At the beginning of every year, corporate organizations and non-business organizations formulate plans and objectives, strategies for the year. Whatever they do is a product of strategic planning. They would have gone through a process to arrive at their objectives for the year or their goals for the year, and then begin with implementation. Strategic planning is good for every organization, and I just want to highlight a few benefits of strategic planning before we go into the details. It helps in improved decision making because if you go through the process of strategic planning, you are able to come up with a comprehensive plan that helps in making decisions because the decisions are based on a certain process. They are a product of a process you would have gone through. They are based on certain indicators. They are based on certain analysis that you would have done based on certain factors. And that leads to increased efficiency. It also helps in better resource allocation because you are able to clearly outline what you want to do, and on the basis of the specific activities and actions you want to embark on, you are able to now tell the resources that will be needed and also how to allocate these resources to ensure effectiveness and efficiency. And strategic planning also enhances competitiveness because one of the things you do in strategic planning is to assess your own strengths and weaknesses in the face of opportunities and threats, and also to scan the environment. And in doing that, you would also look at your competitors and what they are doing and what you are not doing, or what you are doing and what they are not doing, what the market needs. And that helps you to position your organization in the best of place to compete with the other organizations that will be competing with you. So it enhances your competitiveness as an organization. The strategic planning process begins with knowing or developing your vision and mission as an organization. Every organization has its own mission and vision. The mission will explain the purpose of your existence and what we do currently. The vision tells the direction you are going in the defined future. Defined future because it cannot be in perpetuity. Within a certain time frame, you develop a kind of vision that you want to pursue and you plan for that. So you develop mission and vision, and then you do your internal audit and your external audit, which we'll be talking about. Out of that, you establish your long-term objectives, and then also decide on the specific actions that you want to pursue. You implement those ones, and as you do that, you evaluate your performance and also look at the outcome of what you would have done. So we begin with the first one, defining your mission. Your mission statement defines the purpose and values of the organization, as I mentioned earlier. Why do you exist? And what values do you stand for? What is the purpose of the company's existence? This will tell your mission story, or it tells us what you are in for. So an example of a mission statement would be to provide high quality products and services to our customers. That can be an organization's mission statement. But you can be more specific by telling the kind of services you want to offer, the kind of products you want to offer to the markets. So an academic institution would say we exist to provide teaching and research or learning services, and then the target group will be defined. A healthcare facility will say we exist to provide healthcare services to people. A financial institution would say we exist to provide financial institutions to a certain category of people, which will be defined, and the kind of financial services would also be defined. That is your mission. Now, once you have your mission, you would have to proceed to develop your vision or envision a future. So the vision statement would describe the desired future state of your organization. The mission tells us what you exist to do, what you are currently doing, the values you stand for, but the vision is telling us in a defined future or a desired future state where you want to position the organization, where you want to go. So an example would be to be the leading provider of innovative solutions in our industry. The industry would have to be defined. But it tells us that within a particular time frame, say 5 years, you want to position the organization to be the leading provider of innovative solutions within your industry. Meaning that when the industry is mentioned or that particular service or product is mentioned, and consumers or customers are looking for a provider that will give the best of service, your name or your company's name will emerge. So that if I say I'm looking for a company that will give me the best bottled water in town, immediately I mention bottled water, the name of your company will come to mind, or somebody will mention that name. It means that you have positioned yourself successfully, your company successfully, to reach that state. And that can be an example of a vision statement. So we begin with the mission, which tells why we exist, our purpose. The vision is telling us where we are going in a defined future. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years or more. And then we pursue that. Now, once we know our vision and our mission, we would have to now analyze the environment of the organization. This involves assessing our internal and external environment. What internal factors would influence or affect our ability to pursue the vision that we have defined or crafted for ourselves? And what external factors would equally affect or influence our vision? In terms of internal analysis, we would be talking about our strengths and weaknesses. In terms of external, we'll be talking about opportunities and threats. And then again, if we expand external, we'll be talking about in the general external environment, what political factors are likely to affect our organization, what social factors are likely to affect our organization, what economic factors, inflation, exchange rates, interest rates, how would these affect us? Taxes, are they likely to affect us? These are all parts of the elements within the external environment. Technology is one key element of the external environment. How would technology affect us within the next 5 years? Is there any emerging technology? and how is that going to affect us? Or what kind of technology would help us to deliver the best of value to our customers within the next 5 years? And then we'll also have to look at the general environmental factors, global factors. What is happening in the United States? What is happening in China? What is happening in Russia and Ukraine? How are these going to affect us? The first question will be, are these able to affect us? Are they likely to affect our ability to provide what we want to do? And if yes, what will be the extent of effect and how are we going to respond to that effect? We would have to look at all those things. So going a little deeper into the SWOT analysis, it is a tool that is used to identify an organization's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. Your strengths are internal. They are internal positive attributes of your company. And these are things that are within your control. For instance, if you measure yourself against your competitors in terms of the skills of your human resource, are you ahead of them or you are behind them? What do you have that enables you to provide the best of value as against what your competitors are doing? How much capital do you have as against your competitors? What are you good at doing as against what your competitors are doing? Is there anything that puts you ahead of your competitors? These things are your strengths. Your weaknesses are the negative factors that distract from your strengths. And these are things that you might need to improve on to be competitive. Then you talk about the threats, the opportunities first. The opportunities are external factors in your business that are likely to contribute to your success. Are there some areas, gray areas, that no organization in the industry has yet explored, which hold some benefits for you? If you venture into those areas, you would have to think about those things. Normally, the gray areas hold a lot of opportunity. Untapped areas, what are your competitors not looking at, and which areas have you not averted your mind to? You would have to look at those ones. And then you talk about the threats. These are external factors that you have. Well, you may want to consider putting in place contingency plans for dealing with these if they occur. So is there a possibility of a regulation coming up within the next year which would affect the way you run your business? Is there an indication that a new competitor is entering the industry? And if that competitor has a lot of strength, how is that going to affect you? The good thing about competitors, new entrants, is that whenever they are coming, they would have done extensive research, analyze the industry, and know what is lacking. So they are already coming with something that the existing organizations within the industry are not doing already. And that would be a threat to you. What is the value of that company? How much strength do they have? Who are the people behind that company? What networks do they belong to? And how do these things give them advantage over you? You would have to look at all these things. Then you would also have to look at the effect of all this. When you put your strength together, which ones can you even improve on? The weaknesses, how are you going to address them? So it is not just enough to identify weaknesses. There must be a response plan. How are you going to address these weaknesses? Because they cannot stay as weaknesses forever. Then the threats, you must have a response plan. How are you going to respond to the threats? The opportunities, you must have a plan to tap into those opportunities, those untapped areas, so that you'll be able to create the value that you need out of that opportunity. Now, once you have done your internal, you have done your SWOT, you would have to look at the other factors I mentioned, the political factors. I hear people saying most of the time that I am a businessman, I'm not a politician, I don't care about what happens. You would have to care, because every decision that a politician takes affects our daily lives. So you can be running your business as an individual, but the decisions of the politician would affect the way you run your business or how your business performs. Economic factors, you would have to look at inflation, interest rates, exchange rates, and all those things, prices of goods and services, taxation, and how these will affect you. Note that these effects can be both positive and negative. If they are favorable to you, then they are positive. If they are not favorable to you, they are negative. Then you would also have to look at social factors, consumer taste and preferences. You do not control the taste and preferences of your consumers. The same person who buys from you today may want to buy from another person tomorrow. But how are you going to respond to that in terms of scheduling the quantity of products you want to put out to the market? Social factors, income levels of your consumers, depending on the kind of your consumers you are targeting. What are their income levels? Their ability to pay a certain price. If they cannot pay that price, then it affects your ability to sell the volume that you want to sell. These are all things you have to look at. Then technology. It is changing dynamics of business on daily basis. And one other thing about technology is that every now and then you would have to upgrade or update. And these are expensive, but you cannot afford to be out of it, because if your competitors are using a particular technology to enhance the relationship between the organization and the customers, or to provide the best of service at the convenience of customers, and you are not doing that, then you are already behind. So you would have to consider what is the latest technology on the market, what are consumers asking for, and what would they need in the foreseeable future in relation to technology. You have to think about all those things. Then legal factors. What are the laws that regulate your kind of organization? Are there new laws coming? And how are these going to affect you? You would have to assess all these factors and see the effects, if it happens, on your business. The global factors I mentioned earlier. We do not live in isolation. No country is an island on its own. Things that happen in one country would affect businesses, organizations in another country. So you have to look at these global factors and how they also affect our business. Once you do all these things, you will have a clearer picture of where you stand as an organization in relation to your vision and your mission, and that will now help you to now come up with or formulate your objectives. So these objectives will need to tell us what you are going to do in the next 3 to 5 years or 5 to 10 years, depending on the kind of duration that you are giving yourself. That is why I keep mentioning a defined future. So you will define the period of your strategy and how you are going to do that. Your objectives have to be SMART, and most of us, I believe, are familiar with SMART concepts. They have to be specific, they have to be measurable, they have to be attainable, they have to be realistic and time-bound. For instance, one organization says, our objective is to increase the number of our customers. Another organization says, our objective is to increase the number of our customers by 1,000 by the end of the year 2025. If we compare these two objectives, one is SMART, the other is not. The first one that says we want to increase the number of our customers is not SMART enough, because if we take that objective and the question is asked, what specifically does the company want? You cannot tell. All you know is that they want to increase the number. If you add one more person, you have increased the number. If you add 10, you have increased the number. If you add 20, you have. So what do they actually want? You cannot tell. And once you miss the test of specificity, the others will also suffer. But if we take the second one, which says we want to increase the number of our customers by 1,000 at the end of the year 2025, when you take that specifically, the company wants to add 1,000 more customers. And that will lead us to the next test of measurability. It is measurable because 1,000 is a figure that you can measure. At the end of 2025, you can't tell whether they have achieved the target or not. If they get 800, they are below the target. If they get 1,200, they have exceeded the target. If they get 1,000, they have met their target. And so you can proceed on that, be sure that they are attainable within the context of the organization, they are realistic. So you look at past records, the trend, and tell whether the figure they want to look at this year is something that is realistic. And the timeliness is also stated. You want to look at it within a 12-year period. So by the end of December 2025, you would assess the number of customers you have added from January to December and tell whether you have been able to do. So that is how SMART objectives are crafted. An example is to increase revenue by 10% within the next 12 months. It is specific, 10% increase of revenue within 12 months. And you can't tell. So once you now have your objectives formulated, how are you going to, the next question will be how you are going to achieve these objectives or how you are going to realize them. And that will lead us to developing strategies. Strategies are actions taken to achieve strategic objectives or to achieve objectives. Once you have your objectives, which some people will call goals, broader terms, you need to come out with specific actions that you will take to help you achieve these objectives. So the first thing you do is to identify options. So if you take the example I gave, to increase the number of our customers by 1,000 within the next 12 months, the question will be, what and what would we have to do in order to realize this objective? You begin by listing the options. At this point, you don't make any judgment. You don't do any evaluation because you are looking at ideas. So you think about all this, and then any idea that comes at this point is good. Just write them down. After that, you reflect, and then you now begin to evaluate each of them on the basis of their advantages and disadvantages. And that will now help you to narrow down on the ones that will help you achieve your objective. Once you do that, you select those that you believe are workable, and then you go into creation of action plan. Once you have your options stated, now you are going to develop an action plan. When does a particular action begin? And when would it end? So within a 5-year period, in recent times, organizations will typically adopt a 5-year period for their strategy. It used to be 10, 15, but these days the rates at which things change within the business environment is such that you cannot decide on something today and 10 years from now it will still be relevant. Sometimes you develop an objective today, and within the next 6 months, factors within the environment will even require you to change them. So within the 5-year period, there are some actions that will last for a year, some will last for 2 or 3 years, some will last for the entire 5 years. So you need a plan of action, which some will call implementation plan. So activity 1, when do we begin? When do we have to end it? What resources are required? And how do we get those? So you indicate the resources that are required, and then the timeliness, the timelines for implementation. You would also, in the action plan, have to indicate the people responsible for each action. So if there are 2 or 3 people responsible, you need to state them. And then what should we see to tell us that that action has taken place or has been implemented? So means of verification, and then also the outcomes of your actions. All these things put together will give you an action plan or an implementation plan. So for instance, you say, develop a new product line within the next 6 months. So the next 6 months, if we are in April and we are saying, let's start with May. So 6 months from May, we need to develop a new product line. So the timelines have been stated, 1st May up to the end of the 6th month. Then who is responsible for that? Who is accountable? We need to state. Then what resources are required? We need to state. At the end of that period, what should we see a new product line developed? What would tell us that the product line has been developed? Means of verification. There must be evidence. So what kind of evidence would we need to see? All these things will have to be stated in your plan. That we know who is supposed to do that and when it's supposed to be completed, started and completed. Now, once you have your action plan, so you are going to do this action plan for every activity that you have. And once you have that, you begin with implementation. Implementation involves putting the plans into action, while monitoring involves tracking progress and making adjustments. So you execute the plans, but you do not wait till the end of the 6 months before you go back and check whether what you want to do has been done or whether what you want to see is what you are seeing. Once implementation starts, monitoring also starts. So within regular intervals or at specific time intervals, you would have to be collecting data to see, to check whether what you are getting, the results you are getting, the initial results you are getting, whether they are helping you on your way to achieve what you want to achieve. So that if at any point in time things are not going the way you want it to go, you address it quickly. You find a way of adjusting and reviewing and addressing them so that you don't waste resources, time, and money, go through a whole cycle only to realize that what you want to do has not been accomplished. Right from the beginning, if you monitor closely, you'll be able to tell whether you are making the desired progress or not. And if not, you would find ways of addressing them so that you put in corrective measures to ensure that you get the right thing done. So you track the progress at every stage, and wherever there's need for adjustment, you do those adjustments. So as you do this evaluation, you also have to do review. Evaluation involves assessing the effectiveness of your strategies and plans. So you assess the performance from time to time. You can do mid-term review, mid-year review, whatever, to help you understand the progress that is being made and whether you're on track. And then this also helps you to identify areas for improvement where you need to improve. Sometimes you may even have to go back to the plan and then revise some of your targets if need be based on the realities on the ground, and then you update your plans accordingly. All this will have to be done whilst implementation is going on. You don't wait till the implementation is done. In terms of best practices in strategic planning, one of the key things you need to do if you want your strategy to succeed is to involve stakeholders. Who are your key stakeholders? The employees of the company are stakeholders. Your shareholders are your stakeholders. Your customers are stakeholders. Your creditors are stakeholders. Anybody who has an interest in the business or anybody who would be affected by the operations of the business or whose actions can affect the operations of the business is a stakeholder. Involve the relevant stakeholders in your strategic planning so that their interests and their needs will be taken into account and considered when you are developing your strategy.
Hello, good evening once again. If you're just joining us, you're welcome to the ILS webinar series, which we bring your way once every month, just to give our participants some educative content on leadership and strategy. Our facilitator had some technical issues, and so he's rejoining to finish up with his presentation, and then we can take your questions and comments, and then we can wrap it up for this evening. And so don't leave yet. Our facilitator is rejoining the session, and then he'll finish with his presentation. And then we'll take your questions and comments, and then we can draw the curtains on this evening's webinar. So stay with us. We'll be back shortly, please. All right. Like I always say that this 1 hour session, I believe that will never be enough to give you all the content that you need on strategy. And that's how come I always recommend our certified strategy professional course to you. Our next course is starting on the 17th of May. And so you want to do well and register. It's a 10-week course. We have both the in-person and then online options as well. So we do it every weekend. You decide to either do an in-person option or do a virtual option. You have the liberty of alternating between these two options depending on your schedule every week. And so you want to join our certified strategy professional. You don't want to just be a manager, you want to be a leader. You want to have all the expertise to be able to lead your team, to be able to achieve organizational success. All right. You can also follow us on all our social media platforms. We are very active on LinkedIn, we are active on Facebook, and we are active on Instagram. At ILS Executive, you can follow us on all our social media platforms because this webinar comes your way every month, once every month. And so once you join us, once you follow us, you get all the updates on our upcoming programs and our upcoming webinars, and then you can participate and be a beneficiary. All right. So our facilitator is on now. He will wrap up his presentation, and then we can take our questions and suggestions, and then we can draw the curtains for today.
Thank you, Rajwa.
Okay, thank
I'm
you, Doc.
sorry
You
about
are
that.
welcome.
I lost connection along the line.
That's it.
So sorry to everyone.
Welcome back, sir.
Patients would be taken into account in whatever you are doing. You also need to times data driven is actually good. You would have to make use of data so that your decisions and actions will be based on data and the reality on the ground in order to avoid any negative effect of environmental factors on your strategy. So there are challenges and opportunities in strategic planning. Strategic planning can help organizations overcome challenges and capitalize on opportunities. In this changing market environment where factors are changing from time to time, one of the key things you need to do is to scan the environment carefully. And if you do your environmental analysis carefully, it will help you overcome the challenges that are likely to emerge in the future. And by so doing, you will be able to address those things in your strategy because you can foresee them and then plan towards them in terms of a response measure, which will now help you to address them. And also, it helps you to make use of emerging technologies to actually position yourself in a way that you'll be able to increase your relevance within the industry and you become competitive within your industry. So, final thoughts, strategic planning is a process. And once you actually go into that, you are able to develop a roadmap for yourself. You follow that roadmap to a large extent, but you are also open to new opportunities and ideas that may come along. So you remain flexible and adaptable so that you will be able to make use of those opportunities as and when they come. You don't rush in strategic planning. You take your time, think carefully. It's time consuming, but the benefit is worth it. Once you're able to go through the discipline of doing it stage by stage, analyzing everything before coming up with your strategies, you realize that in the face of changes in the market, in the face of difficulties and other things, your strategy will stand strong and will be able to help you stand firm and navigate through the challenges of the business environment. I will pause here and then we'll take your questions, your contributions, your comments, then we can wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samuel Seglah, for this insightful presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel Seglah, for this insightful presentation. I hope that this has been an eye opener to some of us. We would also like to apologize once again for these technical issues we had today. And so some of you were not able to follow through, but we want to apologize once again. This session was always on our social media page. And so if you want to go back to listen and then refresh your memory, it's always available on our social media page at ILS Executive, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and then on Instagram as well. So we'd like to take your questions and then we can wrap up for this evening. So if you have any questions or add-ons, you can just leave them in the comment section. Let's take them briefly and then we can close for today. Any questions and comments from anyone, you can just drop them in the comment section. Let's engage the speaker before we draw the curtains for this evening. Okay, so there's a question here. Okay, so Doc, if you can hear me, this question goes to you. It says that what are the core elements of a robust strategic plan for corporate organizations? It says that what are the core elements of a robust strategic plan for corporate organizations? Doc, please, did you get that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So, a robust strategic plan in today's competitive business environment, in today's VUCA environment, businesses are competing in an environment that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. You need a strategy that entails the aspirations of all stakeholders, all the relevant stakeholders. That is why I mentioned stakeholder involvement. You need a strategy that is flexible, not the one that you think is cast in stone, one that you can easily adapt to, or you have room for changes that are likely to occur in the future. That means that you have an open mind, you know what you want to do, but you are also open to new ideas, but they should not totally or drastically deviate from what you have planned to do. Another key element is management support and involvement, because if the leadership of the organization is not committed, the strategy will not work. And I am saying this as somebody who has consulted extensively for many organizations and has helped draft strategic plan for organizations. Sometimes the SMEs would do it because they are going for some grant or funding, and donor is asking for a strategic plan, or sometimes you want to go and get some funds somewhere, even for the big corporate institutions. They want to do something, and the board and other agencies are asking for it for regulatory purposes. Then they come and they say, we want a strategic plan. If that is the intention, you craft a new strategic plan, a very good one, but it will just end on the shelf. So you need one that has management support. It must also take into account the organizational culture, because if you have a weak organizational culture, implementation will suffer. So you need a strong organizational culture to make your strategy work. But the key thing is broader stakeholder consultation before you finalize your strategic plan. Do extensive consultation with all your relevant stakeholders and make sure their concerns have been addressed. In that case, you can get everybody's support with implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. I hope that his question has been answered. We'll move on to the second question, which says that how often should companies revisit or update their strategic plans? How often should companies revisit or update their strategic plans? Doc, please, over to you.
All right. As and when you feel or you think it is necessary to do so. Traditionally, if you have a 5 year strategic plan, you will normally do a mid-term review after the third year. You can do a review, but recent events also makes it possible for you to review your plan even before 2 years. And I mentioned to a group last week, in the last quarter of 2019, I drafted a strategic plan for a company, a very big company in this country. And that plan was for it was to start in 2020 to 2025. So it would have ended this year. In that plan, they were going to build offices in all the regions to expand the operations to cover all the regions. They were going to put up physical structures. We did not know of anything called COVID at the time, but just 3 months after presenting the plan to them, we were under lockdown. And then all those nice ideas up to today have not been implemented. In 2022, we had to sit down and review that plan. Even before 2022, in 2021, we sat down and did an initial review to see what they should focus on and what they should not focus on. In 2022, we gathered again and looked at what they should rather be looking at going forward, taking into account what we call the new normal and all those things, working remotely and all those things have to be considered. So there could be drastic changes within a short period, which may require you to review your plan. You may also leave it if nothing of that nature occurs, and then within 3 years you can do a review and see whether you are on course. New ideas may come on board, new dynamics within the environment will emerge, new trends will emerge, new technology may emerge, which will now make the earlier one you have talked about not useful. So you need to closely monitor the progress of implementation vis-a-vis what is happening in the industry, what is happening in the market, and within the global business environment. And once you pick signals that you have to review, you should be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. Our time is fast spent. We'll take one last question and then we can wrap up. So we'll take a question from Gabriel Annan, and he says that he needs a little clarification on how to use the SWOT to develop a good strategic objective. I need a little clarification on how to use the SWOT to develop a good strategic objective. Over to you, Doc, please.
All right. Thank you, Gabriel. I begin by saying you look at your mission, the purpose of your existence, and then your vision, where you are going within a defined future. Now, the key question is what business are we into? Who are our customers? What do they need? Who are we competing with? And how can we get ahead of the competition? In doing that, you need to do an assessment of yourself, of the organization to help you know you have what it takes to provide what you are thinking of providing or to get to the destination. So you have to assess your own strength to determine whether you are capable of doing that. And in doing that, you look at your weaknesses. What do you lack that will impact on your ability to actually do what you want to do, get to the destination you want to? In doing that, you look, are there other areas I have not yet looked at or the industry players have not availed their minds to? That could be a game changer. So if we are all providing water in plastic bottles, and yes, consumers are buying, and I'm doing my strategic analysis, I ask myself, beyond bottled water and sachet, is there something else we could do that everybody or majority of the people will be interested in? Maybe the people themselves have not thought about it, but once we know that there's opportunity here and we talk about it or we present it to them, they would be looking at that. I know a company that was providing products, I will not mention the name, and things like the below tin and all those. And then they came with the sachet, the big one, like the one that the Milo and all those things. Then one day, as they were looking at their strategy, they look at a particular product that they offer. And so these things are taken by school children. And we put them in big, big bags and sell to the parents. And then they dish them into smaller containers and give their children to go to school. Why can't we come out smaller sizes of sachet where we can just put this product in it? The school children can just take one and put in their bag. And then when they're on their break, they just take it and consume. That was an opportunity. The moment they learned that thing, it became a game changer for them because parents stop buying the bigger sizes that they will keep at home with extra burden of finding a smaller container to dish a portion for their students to take, their children to take to school. Now they can just take one and put in the bag and then the children will go to school. So these are things you can look at, opportunities, untapped areas. And this will help you in formulating your strategy because you are thinking about getting ahead of the market. You are looking at getting to a certain level within the next few years. But what can you do differently Apart from what you are doing, what your competitors are doing, this could be an opportunity. A story is told of a company that sent their marketing team to go to a village far off. They produced shoes, and they went there. The first company team went there and they said, the people don't even wear shoes. It's a low-go area for us. Let us not think about them because there's no market there. But another company sent their marketing team there. They went and came back and said, there's a huge market. They said, what is the market? They said, the people don't wear shoes. And the question was, if they don't wear shoes and we sell shoes, why is it a market for us? And they said, we are going to teach them how to wear shoes. And once we teach them, we'll have them for a long time. So think about areas that nobody is thinking about or nobody has not yet thought about. Those could be opportunities. And then you look at the threats. What factors would inhibit you or make it difficult for you to get to the destination you want to go? Once you're able to do this analysis of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths, it helps you to know where you stand, your real level, what you can do and what you cannot do. And on the basis of that, you now formulate your objectives. So some of the objectives will be to enhance your strengths. Some of the objectives will be to work on your weaknesses, address the weaknesses. Some will be to go into tap areas, and some will be how you are going to respond to the threats that will come from the external environment. That is the advantage of using the SWOT analysis. And to simplify it for you, if you are going into a competition with someone, you are going to fight somebody, you are going to war, you would have to assess your own strength in relation to the strength of the person you are going to meet. You must know your enemy, what they are capable of doing and what they cannot do. And vis-a-vis what you can do and what you can also not do. And if after your assessment you realize that no, I do not have what it takes to meet this person, you will not even venture at all. But once you know that, oh, this person has these strengths, but he lacks this one, which I also have, on the balance of probability, if I deploy A, B, C, D, I'll be able to conquer him. You are ready to go. That is SWOT in its simplified term. Thank you.
Questions has been answered. Like I always say that this is not enough. And so if you want to hear more and to know more, you would like to join our certified strategy professional course, which is starting on the 17th of May, just next month. And then we're going to give you a full rundown on strategy and how we can become great leaders in our various organizations and fields. And as leaders and managers, we know that the landscape of leadership and strategy is constantly evolving. And today, more than ever, organizations are relying on strong, forward thinking leadership to navigate complexity, foster innovation, and drive sustainable success. And that's why this webinar has been carefully curated to address some of these present challenges and opportunities that managers have been facing. All right. So we just want to thank you all so much for joining this month's webinar series. We also want to apologize once again for the technical issues that we had. Thank you all so much for staying with us too. We've overrun our time by some 16 minutes. And so thank you for staying with us. We are deeply grateful. If you want to hear more from us, you want to call or WhatsApp our number 0244 268672. 0244 You can call or WhatsApp us for more information. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at ILS Executive for more information. We are also located at East Legon. We are just behind the GT Bank or the Mensvik Hotel stretch. And so if you also want to pass by the office, we are located at East Legon for more details. All right. So thank you all so much. This has been the ILS webinar series coming your way April. Will come your way again in May for some free educative content. Thank you all so much. And then we'll see you again. It's bye for now.